good afternoon, everyone. It is January the 30th, 2025. By the time the next show comes along, we are going to be in the second month of the year. So a 12th of the 2025 is already over. I don't know how that makes you feel,
Old
partner,
or
and yeah, older. Yeah, this kind of flew by real fast. Really, really nutty. But anyway, we're about to enter February. Welcome to Scouching Live. I, of course, am your host, Will. I'm joined by my producer, Mr. AJ Jadaro. AJ, how
yo,
are you today?
Leafs are no longer in first. My
Yeah,
heart is
it's a real
sad,
shame.
but
Yeah,
they can get back there.
yeah. I mean, they're not far back now.
They just got to win one game.
They just got to start actually winning hockey games, and then I think
Well, they just
they'll be
gotta they
better
just
off.
gotta get healthy too, right?
Yeah,
And maybe improve the blue line instead of the forward group. Okay,
yeah,
please,
yeah.
please don't let me.
Hey,
Please don't make me deal with any more Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I've had enough. I've had enough.
trade trade deadline wish list time is, I would say, coming into focus. We have obviously the break because of the Four Nations, but it'll come up quick. So get your wish list ready of what you think Toronto needs.
They're
And
not. They're not gonna listen to me.
no, probably not.
I'm gonna
Probably
be
not.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that note, we have a great show today lined up. We took a look at some of the big lanky defensemen that people brought up in last show that maybe were worth a look and seeing what might make them potential NHL players. We're obviously going to talk a lot about Jim Rutherford's wonderful press conference from the other day and what's going on in Vancouver a little bit more after our discussion on Monday. We're also obviously going to talk about Corey Pronman, but before we get into that, obviously some sad stuff to get through. Obviously, that crash over the Potomac River last night took a bunch of terrible just a terrible thing that happened. Obviously, 1994 Paris figure skating champions Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov, and as well as a bunch of young figure skaters coming back from a youth camp. Um, Obviously, a huge tragedy. So my thoughts are with the coaches and the families and everyone affiliated with anyone involved in that. Just a big old sad time. It's just horrible. I can't even imagine what that would be. And the future of figure skating. It's a shame. It's really sad. But also Sean Simpson, Ottawa Senators commentator and Twitter superstar, also passed away. Obviously, very sad. I always found Sean extremely entertaining and a really, really fun Sens commentator to follow. Whether or not you agreed or disagreed with him, he was always entertaining, and I think that's a big loss for the Sens community. Obviously, the team itself has had close ties with him, and TSN. He was obviously there for a while, and so yeah, always an entertaining guy, and he'll be missed. But on a bit of a brighter note, before we get to our main stories of the day, our main topics of the day, I also wanted to shout out John Tortorella, man. John Tortorella, 1600th game this evening. He's going to be behind the bench for 1600 games. One of my I don't know the guy personally, and I don't know everything about how he is as a coach, but from what I know and from what I'm told and from what I read about him, one of my favorite coaches in the game, one of my favorite personalities in hockey. So congratulations to him for 1600 games behind a bench. I'm not sure how many coaches have hit that point, but it can't be that many. That's approaching 20 seasons behind the bench in the NHL, which is just an amazing achievement. And to do it with so many different teams is pretty incredible. So I just want to look actually. Do you actually know off the top of your head NHL head coaches
No, but
being
I should have been
coached?
looking. I should have been a better
No, it's
producer.
okay. No, it's fine. We'll yeah, so that puts him seventh in the list of most games coached by an NHL head coach behind Al Arbor, Joel Quenneville, Barry Trotz, Lindy Ruff, Paul Maurice, and the only man to be listed as coaching in 30 seasons of the NHL, Scotty Bowman. So Tortorella with his fifth team, 1600 games. What a guy. That's good stuff. Love to see it. And hope he continues steering the ship in
Hmm.
Philadelphia for a while longer. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we are going to be discussing first is the most recent list from our boy with the Athletic, Mr. Cam. I just saw the comment about Cam Lund, but Corey Pronman. So if you're not familiar, Corey Pronman is one of the two prospect writers at The Athletic, and he just put out his January updated list here. And they're always interesting, I would say. I think, obviously, I'm not going to just tell you because it's paywalled exactly who is where. But what I can tell you is that, yeah, he remains one of the more perplexing analysts out there for the draft, uh, where I still don't really quite understand exactly what it is he looks for or how he sorts these guys. It's still, I think, since he's changed how he grades skills, continues to be very confusing. So, just for posterity, Matthew Schaefer is his top rated guy. He rates his skating, puck skills, hockey sense, and compete level as above average. But if you scroll down to who he has at 24, Ben Kindle, his skating, his puck skills, his compete level, and his shot are all listed as above average as well. His hockey sense is considered average, which I would argue is inaccurate. I would say he's one of the smartest players in the game this in the draft this year, but to each their own, I suppose. And just flipping through it, you're just kind of it's a little confusing if you're looking at how he rates these guys and how he separates them in terms of rating because Matthew Schaefer's the only guy he lists as potential NHL All-Star, and guys like Ben Kindle are rated as a middle of the lineup player, but he sees a lot of their talents as similar. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, what matters is sort of who he seems to prefer and like. And I will also say that Corey Pronman is one of the more accurate to the NHL guys out there. Like when he starts doing stuff that is outside the realm of what people expect, he kind of gets laughed at the time. And then at the draft, everybody goes, oh my God, he was actually kind of right, right? I think he was the only person last minute, really, who put Shane Wright at like 3 or 4 or something and actually said that like NHL teams were a little more skeptical about him. And he nailed it. He nailed it. So when you look at things like this and you go, okay, but a lot of it may very well be fueled by what he's talking to NHL teams about, if he is, or his finger is on the pulse somehow. He manages to do it. And so obviously the first thing that caught my attention was that he's thrown Caleb Desnoyers into his top 5 as a bubble NHL All-Star and top of the lineup player. I mean, again, this is kind of a situation where I would have to go back and watch him again just before I go, I really don't understand that. I mean, I kind of don't, but I'll have to watch him again and sort of see what the deal is there because putting him sandwiched between Michael Misa and Porter Martone is pretty out there to me, but I'll have to go take another look. I've seen him a bunch already this year because he's the guy that I feel like is most at the polar opposite, relatively speaking, for me, especially if he's going to be a top 5 guy in this year's draft. But I mean, lots of times before has there been top 5 guys that I don't see as top 5. I mean, Victor Eklund, Roger McQueen, and Anton Frondel are together. I actually just watched Frondel the other day, and I've said this a bunch of times. I still don't know what to think about him. I know he had a huge game. I think it was the game after the one that I tracked. I think he had 3 or 4 points. Huge game for your garden. And I'll, again, I don't really know what it is that I think positively about his game. Oh, actually, that's not true. I do. But negatively, I mean, I also don't really know what to bring up because he's just kind of there, but you can tell he plays the style of play that probably will work in the NHL in some way. I also did a game of Eklund this week, and he was pretty darn good as well. Again, Roger McQueen, I have him lower, but I'm going to hold my tongue until we see him again. I don't really know what I can say about him. I feel like it'll really depend on a lot of factors once he comes back, which I believe is going to happen soon. I mean, he's someone I saw commented. I saw someone comment Keyshawn Aitchison is in his top 10. I actually went and watched a game. I tracked another game of Keyshawn Aitchison. I just at this point I see the appeal, but he's just not my type of guy. I get it in terms of like being a guy that NHL teams are looking for, but I personally I've seen him so much now, and it's been so consistent. The things that I think make it that such that a top 10 pick to me is a little nutty, especially considering like in this list, he's got him ahead of guys like Jackson Smith and Carter Bear and Lyndon Lakovich and Braden Coots and Redim Murtka. He's got him a tier ahead of Redim Murtka and Cameron Reed and Blake Fiddler. Like I get the feeling that a lot of these other guys, if you see the game from a psychological perspective and you really want to see a guy who gets under people's skin and gets under people literally and throws them to the ice, then yeah, he could be a good option there. But like, I'm a data driven guy. And in a lot of these games, Aitchison is not driving great results. But again, if you disagree, I can see why. And if you, I mean, he's a great kid. We've met him. We interviewed him.
Hmm.
Really great personality. I'm not trying to throw shade at him as a kid. Like he's a great kid. We had our great experience with him. But in terms of where he's evaluated, I don't see things the same way apparently as the rest of the world, which is fine. Um, Pronman also had Henry Brzustewicz really high in his top 20 and Milton Yastrin. So I went and watched those two guys again as well this week. And that's another one where I don't really see it. Yastrin is a guy where I'm kind of surprised if NHL teams see him that positively because I haven't seen like the jam and the intensity level that I think NHL teams are looking for, especially for a center. And Brzustewicz, I mean, again, like a guy who I think, I have him ranked. I like him, but I just see him as a guy who is a pretty smart offensive zone player. He's a pretty smart offensive zone player. He does a lot of things that you need, but where I value defenseman is kind of where he's deficient. Um, is just sort of he like loses a lot of battles. Guys chip and chase around him really easily, doesn't go into the corners very, very strongly and come out with the puck. And, but in open ice, if you hit him with a pass and he has some time and space to think, and in the offensive zone, he can be very, very creative. There's a lot to like. I mean, I think he's an interesting swing to take, but for me in the first round, like he doesn't really check enough boxes for me, especially where I think it really matters for a defenseman. Um, and we'll see what happens. But I went and watched him again, and I think it was my third or fourth game doing him this year. And at this point in the season, like I've seen guys enough where I kind of go, all right, when I come out of this game, I feel a certain way in October. In November, I watch another game and track data and whatever, and I come out of that game going, I feel the exact same. The exact same things that I saw in that game happen in this one. Third time around, I'm going, yeah, the exact same things were happening in that game, and the exact same things were also happening on the positive end of things. Like, and it's kind of at this point where I go, if that's a pattern, then I kind of feel like it just is what it is, and things aren't really going to move the needle for me a tremendous amount. But obviously, that didn't mean I'm never going to watch him again. But it is just he's one of those guys where it's now become a bit of a pattern. Um, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just looking at the guys that he doesn't have on his list, right? So obviously, again, I'm not going to tell you the specific list that he has if you're not subscribed to the Athletic. But let me just look at my ranking tracker here. So because I think he did, I didn't check it out beforehand because I didn't really consider doing it because I'm a silly pants. But the guys he doesn't have ranked on his list, I mean, the most notable one is Malcolm Spence. He does not have Malcolm Spence ranked on his list, which I am very surprised about. Ivan Ryabkin, I'm not surprised about that. Logan Hensler, Cullen Potter, Eric Nilsson, Jack Nesbitt, Cole Reshny. A lot of those ones I can kind of understand. Cullen Potter, I think, is the closest I would go. Like, I don't get that. And I mean, I guess a bigger point too is that Pronman only has 24 guys on his list, and he mentions why in his write-up of why. And it basically circles around the fact that he only thinks that 24 players in this draft class are graded as potential NHLers uh, or potential role players in the NHL or better. And on one hand, I understand that. I get it. But on the other hand, I think that it is very dangerous territory to look at a draft class and make large judgments about the trajectory of the class as a whole that are that specific, right? Like I know that of 220 draft picks, that maybe 30 of them, 20 of them have like long and successful NHL careers, which fair enough. But essentially, what he's saying is like, I know which 24 it's going to be, and these are the ones. And I think that that's a little bit scary. And I also think like there's also guys that are out there that I've seen that haven't had the international exposure, that haven't had the men's league exposure yet, who just I think deserve at least a look and the time of day to be covered in some way. And to me, like watching all these guys this year, like, yeah, I would say that maybe 20 of them, I'd say are guys where I watch them and I go, I am genuinely excited to see what you become. And I'm genuinely looking forward to every single game that I see of these guys. But in this draft class, too, there's a whole pile of guys where I go, I'm very interested to see what happens with you, right? Like part of why I do this is because it's really interesting seeing these guys develop and see what they bring to the table and accept the fact that yeah, there are maybe some shortcomings that don't that probably may or may not hold them back from an NHL gig. I mean, it may or may not. I don't know. But I still want to put it out there that like there are lots of players out here that I would put my name behind and believe in because like that's my job. Like that's the point of all of this, right? I guess if you think about it differently and you just go, well, all I care about is just guys that are going to play in the NHL. Which, and if you think you can identify those guys when they're 17 years old, then fair enough. You know, I can't tell you you're not right, but I see things differently. Like I see this as a much more of like a I don't even know how to describe it, but it's more of a practice of like just seeing what the future of this game could look like and really getting sort of creative and looking under rocks and going, these guys are interesting players as well. And there might be a thing in the future that if things go the right way for them and the right team has them, and like if I were a team that was drafting and developing these guys and talking to them every other week, like I wouldn't solely focus on the first guy that I'm picking. And if I'm drafting 27th overall, I'm going in thinking like, I don't know, if this is nothing, then it's nothing, right? Um, but for me, like, you know, especially having run my I have a simulator tool that I've built that basically takes everybody's rankings and weighs them based on their relative accuracy to the NHL draft. I mean, very few people ever are super accurate to the actual results of the NHL draft, especially past like the first 20 picks. But I try. And in my view, like there's going to be really interesting players available throughout this entire draft class, right? Like last year, people weren't psyched about the draft class, but for me, I came out of it with guys like Kieran Walton and Thomas Galvis, and even a Daniel Neiman, and like all these guys who are having pretty good +1 seasons. Tobias Hunanen. Nobody was really giving those guys the time of day. Ludwig Johnson's another one, right? Like I would take a swing on these guys, and if nobody really gives them the time of day in the first place, then I mean, I guess it works in my benefit. But like, it's just to me an interesting way of doing things that I think it like is that what your job is, right? Maybe, you know. And I know I also will say before I move on, like I feel like there's a lot of times where I go, well, you know, like um I forget what I was going to say, but the point is,
Do you need
I
me,
guess
Will? Do you
no, no,
need me
no.
to
I
step
no,
in?
no, no. I was gonna say the point is like I know that you should put your name behind guys that you believe in, and that your job, like to do your job properly, is to like be reasonable with your expectations and like keep things above ground and like reasonable. But I think there's also a balancing act here too of like I think there's a lot of players out there that deserve, you know, at least some level of hey, this guy exists, you know, they might be doing blah blah blah. I will though admit that like this draft class isn't like amazingly inspiring. But you know, it is what it is. I just, you know, I don't it's but the point is like it's very interesting to see him take this strategy and like how he's doing it and exactly how he organizes these things,
Hmm.
right? Like
I was telling you before,
yeah.
there are always fun guys that you don't necessarily think will work out, but you could still give them a mention or put them in. 24 just seems like, this is good enough, rather than doing what you're supposed to do, which is a first round. Now, he's allowed to do this, clearly, because he did it.
Of course, yeah.
But I don't know. I just kind of feel like you could have put 8 more names down.
Yeah. And again, following the logic behind a lot of what he did put out there is really difficult, right? Like, you have a guy in the top 10 who you have your skating, puck skills, and hockey sense as average, but a tier below you, you've got guys that are above average in the same categories, right? Like, so then what's the point of what we're doing? Like, it doesn't really make any sense. Like, he's got a guy with elite level skating almost at the end of his list, but guys who are like average or below average in some categories well above them, right? Like, it doesn't really always make a whole lot of sense to me, but it's neither here nor there.
Curious, what does he have Michael Misa's like intelligence, essentially? What is that? Because if it's not elite,
everything across the board is above average. Skating, puck skills, hockey sense, and compete level
hockey
is all
sense
listed, and they're all above average, which
what?
I like. Take it away, you say it.
Hockey sense above average. That guy is a genius. Like, with hockey, having sat down, listened to him break down tape, that guy is incredible at what he can pick up and how things influence his decision making. Go watch the game tape. He is, every little thing that happens on the ice influences how Michael Misa approaches what he's going to do. And he says as much. Like, he doesn't say it outright flatly in the way I'm saying it, but you can just, when you listen to everything he says, it shows just how well aware he is of what's going on in the ice. So, above average is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking in the sense of like NHL level, but again, like,
I don't see how that's any different though.
Yeah, like, he's got guys like, again, Ben Kindle is at the end of his list, and he's got him as a potential middle of the lineup player who is listed as above average pretty much across the board. It's like, if you're above average in that many categories in the NHL, I feel like you're a pretty important player. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. The point is, I'm surprised at some of the names left off. Frankly, I'm surprised that we're in January and he still only believes that 24 guys are even worth seriously considering for NHL time. But I mean, if you set your bar and literally none of these other guys are even meeting it in any way, shape, or form, then fine. Then that's the flag you're putting in the ground. But I'm always thinking of, like, if I'm an NHL team, right? You functionally can't just have 24 guys on a list for an NHL team and go, all right, like, we'll get to the 7th round doing this, right? Like, I guess you could trade all your draft picks in this draft if you want. And honestly, in this draft, like, if you're a contending team, like, yeah, your first round pick, like, I think you could get a pretty good player in the NHL at the deadline and you probably will be okay. But still, I think you could get good value this year, especially considering who people have ranked really high and in that first round and who I think is a little undervalued. And yeah, I mean, you just go from there. But for me, it's always interesting to see other people's perspective, especially when they fall a little bit outside the norm. And respect to Pronman. If that's what he believes, then so be it.
At least he's speaking his mind, and I can appreciate that.
Yes. Speaking of speaking their mind, we got we did an interview with Lyndon Lakovich the other day, and he was awesome.
Yes, he was.
We really enjoyed talking to Lyndon. So again, thanks to him and Moose Jaw for helping us put that together. That will come out when? Next week?
No.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
3 weeks? 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks. Friday.
Yeah, so it's 3 episodes from now because we have Matthew Schaefer dropping tomorrow, Carter Bear the next week.
Yep.
And then Lyndon Lakovic.
Right. Yes.
So my new bromance.
Busy couple of weeks.
Lyndon Lakovic.
Yeah, AJ's got a new bromance going here with Lyndon Lakovic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I had a great time talking to him. It was really fun.
Oh, we all did. Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
Well, I always give a little spiel about what my purpose in the call is, and it's like, making sure that like the shots look as good as they can. I just said, I don't really have to do much this time around because you've got everything set up nicely and it's all looking good. And he's like, thanks, you look good too. So I'm like, whoa, did we just start a bromance? He's like, yes.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah.
Lyndon, if you're listening, I love you, bro. Respect,
Yeah,
mad respect.
It was a good time. We had a good, and he was really insightful and everything. Like he gets it. Like he, in terms, not again, like this doesn't mean that the other ones we've done are worse, but his insight into his own game and how he plays and how the game functions and works. Like I think if I'm an NHL team, I think he interviews really really well. At least with how I would approach it with guys. So we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, we had a great time. But
Quickly,
we also yes.
What's his hockey sense rating on Pronman's list?
I think it is average.
Well, that's ridiculous.
I think it's everything is average. Skating, puck skills, hockey sense, compete, except his shot, which is above average.
I disagree with the hockey
He also
sense.
says Lakovic hasn't lit it up on a poor Moose Jaw team, but that is just false. He has, let's see, Lakovic, where is he? So I have him at 10 on my list right now. He's on pace for 67 points, which on paper doesn't seem that great, but that's 40% of Moose Jaw's offense he's got points on. So I'd say that's pretty good. I would say that's lighting it up, being involved in 40% of your team's offense and finding a way to be over a point per game on a team like that. Yeah, that's pretty good. But anyway, but the thing we also did want to do is we have a clip. We have a clip from the Matthew Schaefer interview coming tomorrow that we wanted to give a little taste test of, a little preview for people who are here. So AJ, you take it away, manage this how you would like to manage it, and we'll share with the people what a little bit of Matthew Schaefer.
All right, so this is a clip that I cut this morning for the game tape. So I'm just gonna let it roll, and we'll be back in about a minute. So see you guys then.
At the OHL Top Prospects game, you represented the Western Conference as an assistant coach. What was this entire speech like that you gave before the game?
All right, we got this. On his right, we got Cluter. On the right fucking door, right? And on the left, we got Benny. On the back end, we got Glass. Boom. And in the right, we got Benson.
No, it was awesome. I was so happy I was able to still be there with the boys even though I wasn't playing. I love to be around the guys. It makes you feel like you're still playing the game, of course, but to just be there to support the guys, it was awesome.
Was there anyone that you had to like go, hey, watch out the high fives? I've got a broken clavicle here.
Yeah, I wear my sling around, but a lot of people still don't like recognize that I have a sling on, so they start, grabbing my shoulder and things like that. But no, everyone's pretty good with it.
Beauty. Thank you very much, AJ. Obviously, a lot of hard work goes into putting these together, and
job.
Yeah, that too. But it's great to see these guys show up and give us some good stuff, and it's been really cool for me. I mean, I'm obviously not nearly as involved in putting those together as you and Tony are, and
I would say I'm the most involved, but that's okay.
it's just really cool to see, and how and it's good to see how Tony can sort of get them to showcase themselves a little bit, and obviously Matthew Schaefer there. I'm ready to run through a wall, like after he, especially with his arm in a sling, blasting off like that. I'm ready to party. I'm ready to go. So yeah, really cool to see. So,
and I didn't even show the clip of him saying I'm the best player in the draft. Like that's how many good clips we've got from this interview. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Comes out tomorrow, guys, and yeah, check it out because listen, I have to say this. I pour so many hours into this stuff. It's insane. So please don't make me feel like what I'm doing is not worth it, because I know it's worth it. So please.
AJ,
I'm begging you, please.
AJ works hard. AJ works hard.
Just on this. Everything else I do not work hard on. But
we still haven't gotten our billion coffees yet, so AJ's still not paid nearly enough. So
exactly.
we're waiting on a well.
You get it.
Yeah, I get it. But yeah, so again, thanks to Matt Schaefer and the Otters and Tony and you. It's great. I'm excited to see it tomorrow. It's going to be a good time. I mean, I've seen chunks of it, but It's going to be fun. It's a good one.
Oh yeah.
And the other two that are coming too, Carter Bear, Lyndon Lagovich, they're going to be good. It's going to be a good time.
Oh yeah. I've got to say this about Lyndon Lakovic before we move on. He had the best answer ever for who's the toughest player you've ever played against.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He was about to say Connor Bedard, but he said I was going to say Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
But
he changed gears and went off a little.
Yeah, but Logan Stankoven, that guy's
Yep.
like Carter Bear on steroids, is what he said. And
Yep.
I was dying laughing.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So cool.
Yeah. It is cool. It's cool because he definitely, and I don't want to spoil too much of it, but he comes off like a guy who sees things in the game kind of similarly to how we do, you know, and how he was talking about Logan Stankoven and what he does and how he plays and all of these things. And I'm just like, yeah, like 100% agree. Like, it's not even the stuff that people already talk about. Like, it's little details and like just what playing against a guy like that means, especially because Lakovich is big. Like, he's a tall, lanky guy, and you know, so there's a size mismatch, but it almost doesn't matter with a guy like Stankoven.
No,
So
he
hearing
said
him
they
talk
just
about
he just blow up his entire team. And for those
Exactly.
who don't know, that means like completely tucker out the entire team.
Yeah, exactly. So good stuff. I'm excited to see it. And speaking of excited to see it, I'm excited to see what the future of the Vancouver Canucks holds, especially after Monday when we had our show and talked about it a little bit. Jim Rutherford went in front of cameras and he basically ripped the Band-Aid right off, clean off. And
I don't get it. I don't get it, Will. I
it's
don't
bad,
understand.
man.
Why would you do
This-
that?
the only thing I can think of is like you're just tired of the hush hush like rumor mill thing. And you're just
Whatever.
like, you know, I don't know. That's
You don't do
I'm just
that.
trying to like logic. I'm just trying to logic it, but I agree.
My mouth's
I
a
don't know.
leaky faucet, and I would never do that.
Yeah. So just if anyone doesn't know, I have an article up here from CBC. Shout out CBC. Who they basically wrote an article about this, and some of the quotes are amazing. Like even the first one listed here. I felt like for a long time that there was a solution here because everybody has worked on it, including the parties involved. But it only gets resolved for a short period of time and then it festers again. And so it certainly appears like there's not a good solution that would keep this group together. I mean, there's like saying things, and then there's like everything is going poorly saying things. Like that to me is wild.
I thought there was a
Um,
solution, but it appears not.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like I hate to be on the outside and like a bit judgmental, but you guys are like bajillionaires and you are professional athletes and like and in a fan base that like has had what one good season in the last decade. Like we went through it. They're one of the 5 worst teams in the NHL
Two.
over the last decade.
Maybe 2 good
2?
seasons. But even then,
Right.
one of those seasons wasn't good. They just got in because of
Well, they got in.
because
yeah,
the
like-
season shut down.
Oh, right. But regardless, right? Like they have not been a very good franchise for a while in aggregate over the long term. And like I honestly like I think a part that I think some other commentators and everything are kind of missing is and again, like when you sort of lurk around on subreddits for Vancouver fans, like I think you learn things. And Elias Pettersson has been pretty open about an injury kind of making his life a little more difficult. But like if that's the case, then deal with it. Like you can't have a guy making as much as Elias Pettersson playing like he is now. Like whenever I watch the Canucks, that's not the Elias Pettersson that I remember at all. And so I don't know what's going on specifically. I know some people are saying like it's out there that he has tendonitis and there's all these things that are affecting him, but it's like if I had a star player who was like, yeah, I'm playing as if I'm a second line winger, even though you pay me to be a franchise player because I have tendonitis, I'm going, well, we're going to figure that out. Yeah, we're going to sit you, get you to a doctor, get you something to sort of get you moving, because playing in the NHL is really, really hard. And I can imagine that having tendonitis and playing in the NHL every night, you know, it's like the stories you hear about guys where they're like, oh, I broke my hand and I'm still playing in the NHL. It's like, well, you're kind of undershooting and you're risking like further injuries. So what are we doing here?
But Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup.
Right, but the Canucks are maybe not going to make the playoffs. Like, it's entirely possible.
Oh no, I just mean that when it comes to the playoffs, because
yes.
usually
sure.
you hear the crazy stories for the playoffs.
Right, but even in like the regular season, you know, like your star player is dealing like it, you know, the Toronto Maple Leafs kind of shut down Austin Matthews for a little while because he's had shoulder issues and all those things, and he seems okay now.
He looks
like
good.
He's you know, he looks like a pretty good hockey player now. I mean, obviously you need a guy like him to be scoring a lot of goals, but
he had a bunch of chances last
He had a bunch
game.
of, yeah, he's getting his chances. He's getting his looks. But I mean, anyway, we're talking about Vancouver here, and it like Rutherford straight up admitting it's affecting the whole team, saying that the chemistry is off. You know, like I don't know what he's expecting at the other end of this. Like the logic behind it must be to set the record straight in a way.
But why?
And I guess that
why does it matter to set the record straight? You don't need to set the record straight. Just try and fix things. Why do you need to cater to your fan base that way or to other people?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why are you peeling back the curtain? Yes, we have an understanding of what's going on behind that curtain, but for somebody in his position to just outright say, yes, you are all right, all this noise and speculation is very true, and that my comments don't matter because these are all things that the guys in the room already know. Okay, sure, yeah, because somebody in your position going out and confirming all these things doesn't affect those guys at all. It doesn't change how they feel about this place even more. It might push them over the edge, really, in the sense that maybe they're on their way out the door anyways, but like you're just making it worse.
Yeah. I mean, he even says like there's too much going on in the room for everybody to concentrate on what they're supposed to. Like, that's not good at all. Like that's
terrible. And now there's something else.
Right. And so it's like, oh, so it isn't, because on Monday we kind of speculated. It's like, you know what? They're just not as good as they were last year. They're probably have higher expectations of themselves, and they're frustrated with losing, and like guys are going at each other and blah, blah, blah. But then Jim Rutherford comes out and he goes, no, this is like a thing that we've been trying to fix, and it gets okay.
For years. And they decided to move on from Bo Horvat and keep JT Miller instead when these issues seemed manageable at the time. And like, you know, maybe you can look at that and say, okay, well, they thought they could fix it. But if you have to make a decision between a guy who's been your captain for years, and a player that you had recently brought in who was, yes, a better player, no doubt about it.
Sure.
But like, are these issues happening if it's Bo Horvat instead of JT Miller? And yes, JT Miller's a much better player, okay? JT Miller's a much better player. I'm not gonna deny that. But you need the right mix as well. And it seems like whatever they put in together is like it's like baking soda and I think vinegar, right? That's how you do.
That's how you make a volcano.
Yes, that's where I was going with it. I just haven't done that science project in a long time, so my memory was a little groggy on it. But that's model volcano. That's what it's like.
So are we saying then, to move on a little, are we saying Elias Pettersson, future Buffalo Sabre, and reverse Jack Eicheling this?
Please no.
And going
keep him out of the Atlantic. Keep him out of the Atlantic, please.
Buffalo trades some futures that could round out Vancouver's roster, and they can deal with Elias Pettersson's tendonitis or whatever it is, and capitalize on that like Vegas did with Jack Eichel. Maybe.
I mean, I don't know. It would be. Look, I feel like not to be mean to Sabres fans. Okay, I am also going through the pain of losing the Buffalo Bills in the NFL playoffs. So
right. Fresh wound.
I'm on your level here for a second, okay? I don't think Elias Pettersson, who might already be depressed with an organization that he's in, wants to go to another organization that doesn't have a good track record. I don't know how that works. maybe they can convince him, but it'd be cool. Like, it'd be cool if he could be the catalyst for them. But at the same time, if I'm Elias Pettersson, why would I go to Buffalo? There's no palm trees there.
Right. I mean, fair
You
enough.
not get it, Will? You not get the joke?
Oh, I do. Sorry, I was reading through. I was flipping through the chat as well.
You were supposed to
yes.
appreciate it more.
Oh, yay!
There we go. That's better. That's
Yeah?
better.
That better? Okay. I mean, yeah. And if you're Vancouver, like trading Elias Pettersson opens up a big hole on the team. Like that. I mean, I know he hasn't been amazing, but the other centers that are on daily faceoff listed there: Pia Shooter, Teddy Bluger. I mean, Kiefer Sherwood is injured, but I don't think he's a center. Ugh.
There's also another point that
yes.
Rutherford also said, I don't know that trading one of them fixes the problem.
Right.
So you got to trade both of them. So you got to trade both of them.
And you're not going to get much for, I would say, either. Right? Like
you'll get something, but you won't get enough.
Right. I mean, you probably like based on, and it's so crazy to me too, because like I remember JT Miller from last season. That guy was a freak.
Yeah.
That guy was a freak of nature playing for the Vancouver Canucks last year.
I remember your quote from last year.
Yeah.
JT Miller's a frickin' dog. That's what you said.
There was a couple of shifts that I saw him when I watched Vancouver last year, and I'm going, this guy is one of the best guys on the ice. Like, if not the best. Like, just unbelievably talented. And Elias Pettersson, like, I've been a huge fan of him since he was 16 years old. And so to see this happen is just like unfortunate. I have an Elias Pettersson jersey, but like the risk proposition is outrageous. Like you're like, if you think about it from literally any other team's perspective, right? Like Elias Pettersson is a guy who's paid almost more than everyone in the league, almost $12 million a year until into the next decade and into his 30s. And he has been under a point a game this season and dealing with nagging tendonitis, had 2 seasons at a point a game or more. Well, that's not true. He did before, but he kind of erupted for 1 season. And outside of that, he's been around a point a game, 30 goal scorer, 30 to 40 assists, blah, blah, blah. And, you're taking on a lot of risk by taking that on. And so I don't know. I mean, teams can afford it. Like a team like Buffalo could make it work, but I don't know.
They could make it work, but for how long could they make it work?
Right. And
but if I'm the Sabres, I'm trying. Like I'm not saying to not do it, especially because could Bowen Byram be a piece in that? I mean, I wouldn't do it if I'm Vancouver because you need guys that are going to defend. And Bowen Byram, like, maybe you can make it work with him and have a bit more of a cowboy style of, offensive defenseman. But I feel like those guys need more solid players who can just move the puck well enough and do the job of keeping the puck out of their own end.
I agree. And I also feel like a guy like Bo Byram probably isn't a great fit for Rick Tocchet in the first place, based on how he plays, right? Like, I don't know, and that's the other thing too is like, it just seems like Vancouver, like it's kind of like a teetering point in a way where it's like if Vancouver has to trade these guys because you said Rutherford is like, if we trade one, it doesn't necessarily fix it. So let's assume you have to trade both.
And then you have to probably trade Quinn Hughes because is he going to stick around for a rebuild?
Well, didn't he also say that a guy like Hughes wouldn't want to stick around? I feel like
there's so much in this that there's just a ton to unpack, and it's nuts. Right. And I think I think you're right about that.
I think he did say, like, if you get rid of all these guys, then you're like what's a guy like Quinn Hughes going to do and want to stick around? Like, let me just take a look at my draft pick thing here, because Vancouver they have a first and a second round pick to play around with in the deadline. And maybe they could move a guy like Pettersson for a package of stuff and move some picks for some guys that maybe could replace him. But like, if you're getting rid of both JT Miller and Elias Pettersson at some point, like who's your first line center
And
there?
you know what's crazy? They're in a playoff
No.
spot.
Well, that too, right? Like that's
they're,
that
they're
too.
still in a playoff spot. All right.
Yeah. And like, so it's just a really strange situation. Like, it's just like, I don't even want to say like they're destined for like being an absolute failure tire fire of a franchise. I'm not saying that, because it's like, I guess I could see a pathway out of this, you know, like Paul Atreides style. I have a golden path ahead of me, but I've got to eat a lot of sand before I get there. Fair. I could see that path, I guess, but I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know what that looks like, because I don't like, if you swap out an Elias Pettersson for another center, let's say,
You're not
I don't
getting
think
one that's on the
you're not
level.
going to get one that's a 1-to-1. You know, JT Miller, you're probably going to get way less because he's got that no trade clause, right? Like, he's got to approve these things. And teams know now. They're well aware, right? Like, they're well aware of just how bad it is. And that is tough. I don't envy Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin and Rick Tocchet. Like, I don't, especially because these guys are like your franchise guys. You pay them a lot of money to be able to go out there and perform, and they just can't. I don't know what it is. There's something about it that they just can't handle each other. And it's been years of that. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like, but you don't see that many GMs be that candid about a situation. So maybe that to me reads like he's fed up with it too, and he just doesn't care and he's over it and whatever. And we'll see how that works. I wouldn't do it personally, but I also see the logic behind everybody is speculating. People are tweeting about this all the time, and they're constantly lighting up our phones and doing this and doing that, and it's really exhausting, and that's becoming a distraction for everybody.
And just quickly to correct you, he's president of hockey operations, not right. The GM.
Alvin's the GM, yeah. But yes, to see a representative in management be that candid is pretty rare.
And that position's higher up than the GM.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, pretty wild stuff out of Vancouver. I mean, again, and also I wouldn't care as much if I wasn't such a fan of the vibe in Vancouver. Like, Canucks fans are crazy. Vancouver, you know, just the look and the arena and the jerseys and the history and all of these things, like they deserve a good hockey team and a good franchise. And it's been a long time where they've been in some way, shape, or form a bit of a struggle house.
Hey,
and
Will.
Yes.
They haven't won a cup yet.
Well, no, but so you know.
No, hey. I'm just putting it out there because every time people talk about my team's drought, I have to deflect, okay?
Oh.
I have to not be the bigger person and deflect.
Right.
Still the
Fair
second
enough.
most amount of cups, even if they were all won with 6 teams.
Yep.
Go Leafs, go.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get to the question section of the show, again, if you're not aware, you can put some questions in the chat, and for the back hour of the show, we'll get to it. I did want to quickly go over something that was a bit of an interesting talking point from last show on Monday night that some people brought up that got me thinking a little bit and had some specific players that outline this. So if you missed it on Monday, we talked a little bit about guys that are tall and bigger, being long, guys that take a little bit longer to develop. And I basically sort of brought up the question of, like, who are examples of this, right? Like, what are the examples of players that, you know, I think we saw one that was Todd Bertuzzi and Joe Thornton, but like recently, who are these guys that we're talking about that are like this, that take a long time to develop? And so the two names that people popped up, and I might have missed one, but if I did, feel free to put it in the chat. But Maverick Lamoureux with Utah and Louis Crevier. So I took a look at both of these guys today before the show, and I guess, I mean, I much rather preferred what I saw out of Maverick Lamoureux. I think for the type of player that he is, I could see him being an everyday NHLer at some point. I don't think he's there yet. Obviously, Utah doesn't either because he's back with Tucson. But it's an interesting thing, and I think it's a good talking point in the sense of, like, how different people view the same game and how it should be played differently based on your philosophy, right? Like when I watched a guy like Maverick Lamoureux, I see a player who is fine at being fine. Like, and that's not, I don't mean any disrespect by that. Like a guy who can play at the NHL level and sort of sit back a little bit, let the game come to them a little bit. They have some skill, but they're more about stick checks, causing havoc with your reach, slowing the game down, carrying the puck a little bit, surveying the neutral zone, making a pass, getting to the blue line, and making passes or putting pucks on net in the offensive zone, right? Like if that is the goal, then I think you can do that decently well. And so you know what? Like a thing that I will admit that over the years I've really had to try to pick out more and learn a little bit more is, and it's funny because this originally popped up in my brain when I was younger because I would play NHL, and bigger players often look slower than they are. And smaller players often look faster than they are. So, for example, like I think Adam Banach this season in the draft is a fantastic example. That guy is quick and agile and works hard and moves his feet a lot. But I think a big reason why he hasn't projected to high levels of hockey as well as people might have thought he would at this point at the USHL or whatever is because he's not that fast. Like that escape speed and that ability to push defensemen onto their heels and charge through the neutral zone with a lot of speed and a lot of pace. It's just not quite there enough with a guy like Banach who's small, but the agility is there, the skill level is there, the raw fun factor is certainly there. But it's something that can kind of fool you a little bit by going, well, this guy's really small, but moves his legs. And so that's a good thing. But then you look at a guy who's like Václav Nestrasil, for example, right? 6'5", almost a foot taller. And this is also why I started timing guys on a rush, timing them through the neutral zone, because I'm more interested in like during a game, what the pace of their play is, right? Like when they're getting through the neutral zone, try to remove the bias of like size and go, okay, if there's a rush from blue line to blue line and this player is in full tilt and they're getting up the ice as much as they can, and it's not necessarily like if you're faster you're better, it's just to cut through, just like any of my data, it's just to sort of cut through that bias or that nuance or something. And so it's more difficult with defensemen because they don't often go from blue line to blue line, so that's another thing to consider. But it has been very informative about players where you're going, well, the skating stride on these big boys isn't great. And, they look clunky and weird. But then you sort of sit back and you go, yeah, but they're blowing by guys here that you really sort of slow down and pay attention and they're going. Bill Zonin is a great example of that. He's a guy who I've timed really quickly through the neutral zone, but you wouldn't really know it from his skating stride and all these things. Like it's just something that kind of fools you a little bit mentally. So I think at the end of the day, those two guys are, I mean, especially Lamoureux. I watched Crevier, and I really believe that when Chicago is a team that is pushing for a playoff spot, he's probably not on their top pair. He's probably not in their top four. I did not think he was amazing. He's certainly very big. He looks enormous out there, and he skates decently well. But in terms of like how I want a team to play and defensemen to play, it seems to me to be this like sort of very safe understanding of what a defenseman should be. And AJ, you are very familiar with that because of how Toronto's defensemen play. These like sort of defensive, trappy guys who sit back and like it's a way to do it. It is a way to play. It exists. But in terms of like winning and like trying to drive play in a direction that isn't just this like let's play a prevent defense with big lanky guys who can sit back and sort of stick check and be physical along the boards if need be. It's like, well, then what happens when they have the puck, right? And a guy like Crevier, for me, like Lamoureux was playing decently well. I watched a game he played against Montreal. Crevier, I mean, I watched him sort of break a puck across the defensive blue line. All three Chicago Blackhawks were on the rush with him, and they went to the offensive blue line. He had a multiple options to at least try to gain the offensive zone, and he just flips it across the blue line along the boards. It's retrieved by, I believe it was Minnesota, one of their defensemen on the left side, and they just turned the puck over, turned it around, and Crevier and Vlasic were on the defensive rush again, right? And 3 Chicago Blackhawks were caught at the offensive blue line.
All I remember is your reaction to watching him, because I wasn't watching, but Will and I always meet up a little bit before the show, and he's like, "Oh God, why?"
Well, it just was not. It was not a very high end game. Like it was for a guy who played as much as that. You know, like you want your guys out there playing 20 minutes a game to be difference makers. And I mean, teams like Chicago, who are in the middle of a rebuild and are not expected to be particularly good, they lose for a reason, right? They lose because they face a lot of shots in their own end. Their goaltending's not amazing. And watching Crevier, like a lot of the time, it was guys, he's 6'7", 6'8", but guys were blowing right through him. I watched Matt Zuccarello pin him in the corner and just wrestle a puck free from him. Joel Eriksson did the exact same thing.
Matt Zuccarello is what, 5'8"?
I think 5'9", something like that. But regardless,
so
like
almost a foot difference, by the way.
Right. And so it kind of reminded me a little bit of these guys that I've seen over the years at junior age, guys like I hate to pick on this guy every week, but like I remember Owen Power when play was in the defensive zone and how the footwork that he had and how his just kind of left him behind a little bit, and the size factor mattered for a while, but then when push came to shove, it kind of didn't really make much of a difference. And guys could get through him, guys could win battles, guys could retrieve the puck against him, and that to me matters, right? Like if that's how your defensemen are deficient, that's a problem to me. And so I get it. It's easy to look at big, lanky, skatey boys who can get around the ice pretty well and look at them and go, they can do a thing. They can play, right? A coach will look at them and probably go, you know what? Yeah, they can get in the rush, they can stick check, they can pin guys against the boards, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like I look at like events that a player is involved in and like if they go their way and if they don't. And with Crevier, I mean, sure, there were moments where I'm going, yep, like there is enough talent here to maybe eat some minutes, but I did not see a top pair or top 4 guy there at all, at least a guy where I'm looking at other NHL teams with guys in their top pair, top 4, and I just don't see it. Lamoureux, I mean, yeah, there was more there for sure. I thought there was more there for sure, but he always was a big, lanky, skatey boy who, you know, I think now just times things and gaps up way, 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 way smarter than I remember him when he was a draft eligible. But again, still, would I have drafted him in the first round? Like, probably not. You know, probably not. But he was better than I expected, and definitely was another thing for me to sort of take back and reflect on more. So it was interesting to do that. So it's much appreciated that I love it when people kind of push back. It's great because I get to look at it and make a judgment for myself, and that's where we went. Okay, so before we get to questions, obviously we have a little bit of ad reads to do. We didn't do them off the top of the show, but we'll do them now. So we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link code in the description, or scan the QR code in the video window, or you can click the link in the chat and you will help us out with that affiliate link, and we'll get a kickback on anything you buy in the store. You can also help us out by getting a subscription at Puck Preps, where you will get any and all access to all kinds of WHL, QMJHL, OHL draft, college prep, hockey, whatever you want. We've got coverage, 16U AAA, 15U AAA, 14U AAA even. Guys are hitting the ground running on the earliest potential draft classes that you could possibly find as they head their way into college and junior hockey. So you can check all that out at puckpreps.com. Plenty of smart, great people, some of whom are probably coming on the show in the near future. I'll put that out there. But yeah, really, really good stuff. And of course, Scouching.ca, where you can go and get a subscription where you'll have access to all kinds of data visualization tools and data tables if you want to follow along with your players, your favorite NHL teams drafted prospects or players that are in this upcoming NHL draft. You can check it out at Scouching.ca, where we've got tiers for any budget, and a really, really cool Discord server over there where we're talking hockey and talking prospects and talking all kinds of stuff all the time. You can check that out at Scouching.ca. That's true. We also do watch some hockey together. It's a good time.
You can watch me scream at the Leafs when I turn them on, or when I turn the channel on, because I'm not in a... Well, I'm going to be honest. I've not watched as many Leafs games this year because they're a lot more boring than they used to be since the D group has gotten a lot bigger. But I could be enticed.
if you want to listen to AJ with his cell phone propped up on his gut while he's laying on a couch watching the Toronto Maple Leafs lose, it's a great place to do it.
Don't expose me like that before they get in, okay?
I'm saying it's an advertising opportunity. If that's what you want, that's what you get. You know, sometimes that's what you get.
Sometimes.
I say that out of respect. You know,
Okay.
it's fun. It's a good time. Yeah, and I mean, hearing you scream is also great. It's a good time. Go Leafs go, right?
Go Leafs go.
All righty. Well, then on that note, let's get to questions.
Let's do it.
Again, if you're not familiar, you can fire questions in the chat, and we'll get to them in the next hour.
So, Will, thoughts on Ville Koivunen's season in the AHL?
Well, I know why people are asking that. Because he has 7 points in his last 2 games.
Awesome.
Coming off a 4-goal game last night against the Hershey Bears. 4 goals on 5 shots, I should say. He also has 13 points in his last 10 games. I mean, look, I am a Ville Koivunen truther. I mean, longtime fans of the show.
We are Ville Koivunen truthers. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I loved him in that year too. I liked him a lot.
Yeah. One of the few Finnish junior hockey league players that I really believed in.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I had him at 25 that year, so feel pretty good about that.
I think I might have had him a little higher. Let me go check.
Yeah, I could have had him a little bit higher. I mean, I don't know if I saw him as better than like a Nikita Chibrikov or Scott Morrow. It's so funny going back to 2021 now. We've had a few years, and I'm just looking at my list, and it's like all the guys that I just didn't like that much, but people really did like a lot, were the guys that I was too high on, right? Like the most notable one here, I had Chaz Lucius at 20. And every time I watched Chaz Lucius play, I went, I don't know. Like he's been injured a lot. Obviously that factors in, but I definitely did not see, he was on average ranked at 13th. And I remember that going like, and again, more goals than assists club member. But like Carson Lambos played in Finland that year, and I did not think he was very good there, but people had him in that range, and I felt a little crazy not liking him as much. But like Scott Morrow I had in my 20s, Ville Koivunen, Matthew Samoskevich. I mean, that's around where I had him. But regardless, the point is, I love Ville Koivunen. I thought he was a guy that people were sleeping on, and it seems like he's coming along really well. I can't say I've seen much of him in the AHL at all. But he's always been just a guy who, whenever I have seen him, super, super smart, super, super capable. He seems to have grown. He's 6 feet now. I remember part of the thing when he was younger was he was a little small and got pushed out of the way a little bit too easily at that level. But I mean, I love this guy. I think he's super, super smart and in a way where you can sort of build around it and really have a really strong all-around hockey player. So to see him have success, you know, in the AHL right now at the age of 21 is great. And I think in Pittsburgh, like he's definitely, I mean, he's part of what they got for Jake Gensel. I would argue he was probably the centerpiece of that deal. Like in terms of prospects, Ponomaryov, they got Cruz Lucius out of it as well. But Michael Bunting, yeah, I mean, of all those guys, Koivunen was probably the one that I would have been most favorable towards.
Yeah, and he'll be a good middle six player.
Smart all around middle six guy who is capable. And someone retweeted the Scouching report I did of him actually back in 2021, where I titled him the PTFG King, and I still believe that. He's just a guy who goes out and plays the friggin' game and plays it really well.
I think Carter Bear might need that crown though, potentially.
Yeah. He's there, I would argue, you know.
And I had Koivunen at 23, so
right. So like minds, you know, great minds think alike. What are your thoughts on Cooper Simpson? 5-goal, 2-assist game last time out. I mean,
I forgot because we jumped right into YouTube chat questions. So let's answer this one and then get the ones you have banked up from last time too. My bad.
Which one?
Didn't you have a couple banked up in the sheet?
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, I had some Instagram questions backed up. A couple of them I can't answer because it was David Phillips and I refused to answer his questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
But Cooper Simpson first.
Yeah, no, I mean there is a couple in here that I do want to answer. The first one is about Caden Taylor, Peterborough Pete's guy. I've never been like blown away by Taylor. Honestly, I've seen the Peterborough Petes a lot over the course of the season. I like the defenseman there, Carson Cameron. He's pretty fun. But Caden Taylor, like he's got some good size. He's one of these guys who I think plays really strong 200-foot sort of impact hockey and just is a good facilitator of play. But I don't think he really like moves the needle for me enough where I put him on my list and like he would be the best player on my list at some point. He'll get drafted, I would think, like as a later round guy, maybe mid to late round pick, and you'll leave him in Peterborough for a little while. I haven't seen him in a while, I'll admit as well, so I'll check him out. But I've always come away with the same impression of him over the last 2 seasons, where like I see why he was valuable at the OHL draft, and the size and the smarts and the sort of balance of his game is good. But I don't, in terms of the NHL, I've never been sold on him being like at my list to a point where I would pick him at a draft. Someone asked about Danil Ustinkov, if he still looks like a guy that should be picked. And I'm going to be honest, like I've tracked Ustinkov a couple of games this year. I've looked at him again. I've watched a bunch of them. I don't think he's gotten any better than last year. I think it's pretty telling that he's not at the top division in Switzerland this year. I talked to some people about him over the last couple of months and got some more insight into him, and he's still got some things to learn. I mean, granted, he is extremely young still. He's barely 18 years old. He was one of the youngest guys in the draft last year. I don't know why he didn't play a minute for the Swiss junior team this year, because I looked at some of their defensemen and went, I probably would play Ustinkov ahead of these guys. But I do think that he was a guy, we mentioned him in the report we did last year, that he is probably the biggest project that I liked in last year's draft. He's a guy who I thought had a lot of potential, right? Like he has really shifty skill. He's got a great wrist shot from the point, and he produces offense at the second division in Switzerland decently well. But the physicality of his game, I think, needs to really improve. He gets beat in close quarters still a lot, which was a big problem last year for him. But in terms of like pass vision and moving the game around while both carrying the puck and passing it and all of those things, like I still think he's a valuable player. Does he get drafted? I don't think so. Maybe he's a late round swing someone takes, but I'm not holding my breath. Did I have him ranked too high last year? Maybe, but I still really believe in him. And I think that for where I got him as a team scouting member at like 180 something or something like that, I would take the swing on him. I mean, he's with Zurich, which is a super major program over in Switzerland. And, I know what I saw of him last year at the top division in Switzerland. And I think that there is good potential for him to be something at some point. I like him. I was hoping to see better of him this year, but I still am a fan. I still like what I see. Someone also asked about Alexandre Kaskamaki and Jakob Stantzel, and I think we went over Alexandre Kaskamaki a few shows ago, but we did not go over Jakob Stantzel, who was coming off of a really, really good World Junior with the Czech team, scored a lot of goals, and I've always liked Stantzel. He's a guy who has really good physical tools. I think he's a guy who is strong enough and skilled enough and smart in a simple way enough to make something work. Really, really strong guy who fights through pressure really well, and that matters. Do I think he's this like super, super high upside guy that's going to blow the doors off in St. Louis one day? No. But do I think he could be sort of down your lineup and playing a physical role? He's a powerful winger. He's got some skill. Do I think that's possible for him in the future? Sure. Like I do believe that that's possible. I think the AHL is kind of where he's headed for next year, but for a 4th round pick, he's playing well. Like when I've seen him with Kelowna, I've liked him. He's definitely a good sort of power winger with some good physical tools, like I've said. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what he's capable of in pro hockey next year, because he is definitely one of the more assertive and strong offensive, power wingers at the WHL level this year. So interesting player. I actually haven't seen him in a little while, but whenever I see Kelowna and watched him at the World Juniors, I definitely think there's maybe something there at some point in the future. All right, now we can get back to YouTube chat questions
Mhm.
because the other ones were asked in last week's show, and I think I covered them as best I could. Thoughts on Cooper Simpson? Yeah, so I'm gonna check. I didn't know he had 7 points in his last game, but I wonder if you can see his game by game somewhere. No, but he has 52 points in 21 games in college in high school hockey here. But let me just see if I can find it, and I'll come back to it. Scoring leaders: Cooper Simpson. There he is. Game by game. Yeah, so he had 5 goals and 2 assists against Lakeville South. And you have to be very careful with Minnesota high school hockey. Where is Lakeville South in the standings? They are like a mid-level team. They're 10-9 this year. So they're an okay team. And so he lit up an okay team with 7 points and 7 points on 7 goals. That's pretty incredible. And he had 3 of his goals on even strength. So those ones count, which is great. But I've always liked Cooper Simpson. I'm really hopeful that he goes to Tri-City or something at the end of the season to play there, because I think he is the high school guy that I would look at and pick up if I had the chance. But I really would prefer to see him at the USHL level before the end of the season. Usually they do. So we'll see. But I've always been a huge fan of him. Really, really good shooter, really good skill level. I liked him at the Holinka tournament as well. So we'll see. But he's a guy I've always liked. Okay. What makes an NHL player ready, and who in this NHL draft would you consider NHL ready? Well, I mean, you're NHL ready when a coach says you are. But I mean, to be more serious, I mean, if I'm running a team, I would think that someone NHL ready is someone who is, I mean, I don't think you really know until you play them and you see what they're capable of and where their shortcomings might be in the NHL and where their strengths might be. But for me, I think a huge thing is, can you handle 2 things? One is the pace of the NHL, which is always extraordinarily quick. You gotta get the puck and settle it quick, move it quick, go to the net, get up and down the ice quick, and you gotta be physical, and at least in some way. And the other side of it is you have to be able to handle other people's physicality, right? Like, can you make a play under pressure? Can you get pinned to the boards, find a way to create like a millisecond of time and space to make something happen and get the puck to someone on your team, right? Like, can you keep play moving in almost any situation? I think that's a huge factor. And I don't think you can really figure that out and find that out until you give them a shot in the NHL for a little bit of an extended period of time, right? Like, I don't think 1 game does it. I don't think 4 games does it. But, that's why I think there's a lot of this, like, if an entry level player plays 10 games and you want to send them back, you can. And I think that's perfectly reasonable.
I think it's 9. It's 9 game. The 9 game
right?
trial.
So their 10th game is the one that counts. That's the one.
Yep.
But anyway, the point is, like,
there's not a good way to determine who is NHL ready until they're there.
Right. And I think that just scoring in the AHL is not really it. It's an indicator, I would say. It certainly helps a resume, but it's no guarantee of anything. And to me, it's a matter of, like, can you keep up with the game at that level? Can you handle how physical everyone else is? Are you willing to be a physically imposing player for the other team, or against the other team, I should say? And a lot of that is really hard to gauge before they're NHL ready, but I guess, I don't know. It's hard to say, but it depends on the player. But I think those are the things that you definitely at least need to see in order for trusting a player to play X number of minutes every game.
And the other part of that question is, who in this draft would you consider NHL ready?
Right.
I would throw Michael Misa.
Yeah, I'd say Michael Misa
in. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Misa for sure. I'd say.
How do you feel about
Martone? Has an outside shot, I'd say.
How do you feel about Eklund
Schaefer,
potentially?
I think Eklund could. I would like to see Eklund. I'd like to see it, but jumping from Hockey Allsvenskan to the NHL at 18 years old is tough.
Yep.
I would like to see it tried, but I would not be surprised to see him go back to Djurgården, play first line, and score a bunch and help that team get to the SHL if they aren't there already. They're in contention, but they might not get there. but they have a lot of good young players that he could also play with, and that benefits as well. But like Hagens, I'd say is a maybe, but I'm not. I wouldn't rush him. I don't think. And unfortunately for him, it's either college or nothing, or it's either college or the NHL. And I feel like
Stay in college.
I'd want him in college again. Schaefer, I think I'd give him a look, but see how it goes. I would love it if he could go to the AHL or something, maybe college for a year or two, just to see what he can do there, because I don't know if he's ready for like a top NHL. Like I don't think he's ready for that the NHL role he probably should have, but we'll see. I mean, I love Carter Bear, and I think he plays a very NHL style game, but I feel like he should be in junior another season. Yeah, I mean, Misa for sure, maybe Martone, maybe Eklund. And if other teams just look at a guy and just go, yeah, you can eat minutes and play on your bottom end of your lineup, and we'll be okay with that. So like Rudy Murtka, Blake Fiddler, maybe those guys get a look as well, but usually it doesn't
I
really
just think
happen
that
that way.
Misa's the right
Yeah.
answer in this
I
case.
think Misa's
and
the
you
guy.
start
Yeah.
him on a third line.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Mannheim trio, Vilhoft and Grievous twins? I mean, I can't say I've seen much of them because they don't play in a league where I can see them. I was hoping Wilhoft would stay in Sweden because I thought he was pretty good for Rugla last year. Yeah, he's played. Yeah, like the German Junior League is not really a great gauge of things, but I mean, the guy's got 53 assists in 32 games. Like he's got 81 points there. I'm not sure why he isn't playing men's hockey. But they've only played him for 3 games at the 3rd division in Germany, and he's been pointless in those games. So I don't know how much he's played in those games or not. But it's, I mean, his team is ridiculous, right? Like just to go through their last 10 games. They lost 2-1, but then a 7-6 win in a shootout, 4-1, 9-0, 6-4, 6-1, 3-1, 7-3, all wins. Then they lost 3-2, then a 4-2, 10-1, 9-1, 5-1 winning streak. So like clearly he's not very challenged there. I like Wilhoft though. I think in terms of like, yeah, he's small, but he's quick and skilled and agile. But I don't think I'd draft him this season. Like I'd want to wait and see him at higher levels before I make that decision. And again, I was hoping to see him back in Sweden because I remember watching him a couple of years ago. He played a couple of games with the under 20 team when he was 15, and he looked pretty interesting there. And then he left. So we'll see what happens. But I imagine he'll be on the under 18 team, and he'll probably be one of the more skilled and fun guys on that roster. So we'll see how he looks there. But I'd like to see him play in the Dell and see what that looks like. What do you think of Cam Lund? I've always liked Cam Lund. I mean, I'm not sure how he's doing this year, but I've always really liked how skilled he was. Like he's just really crafty in transition and moves the puck and skates with the puck really, really well, and just seems to move the play in the right direction a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think his overall game is impressive, and he wouldn't have been my pick at 34 that year, but he's a good college player, and I think he has the potential to sort of be down your lineup in the NHL maybe one day. I think you put him in the AHL after maybe next season. I'd say one more year in college is not going to hurt him with Northeastern. Good player, skilled. I've always liked him. I can't say he's an NHL player, and I also can't say I've seen him a tremendous amount this season, but every time I watch Northeastern and he's still the sort of well-rounded, skilled center that can move play in the right direction really well. And he just has always kind of been that for me.
I see what's next.
I'm a Habs fan, but OEL is a +14 on the ESPN site and Riley -14. So how bad is OEL, or does that say the whole Leafs D is terrible? AJ,
No.
you can answer this
Here,
one.
this is what I'll say. OEL, anytime he gets the puck, he just cannot resist when he's in the offensive zone to shoot it and kill a cycle. And it is just automatic, it feels like. There are always better options for him a lot of the time than to shoot, and he just elects to shoot it anyways. And that's what really frustrates me about OEL, more than anything. With Morgan Riley, they just don't use him right. he is not a safe player. You got to let him go and be a bit more wild, be a little bit more creative, be able to rush the puck up ice a lot more than he does. And he just doesn't fit with the style that they play, which is really frustrating. And I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound like bad, but like the only coach that I've seen know how to use Morgan Riley properly is Mike Babcock, because that's when he was scoring like crazy, because he was really, really good at just doing his thing, being a little more, what's the word? Like he wasn't on a leash the way he is now. And he could just go, rush the puck up the ice, throw a pass in front, like essentially carrying it all the way up himself and throw a pass into the slot, and then he'd dart back and not defend very well. But it didn't matter. He scored a ton of points because he was able to actually do the things that made him a good player. And the Leafs, since Sheldon Keefe took over, and now also with Craig Berube, they just haven't played him in the way that he needs to be played in order to succeed at a higher level. And that's been very frustrating for me. Where with OEL, it feels like things teeter on disaster, but he's strong enough to be able to fight through pressure. But a lot of times he just throws possession away, and that is my problem with OEL. He just needlessly throws possession away, whether it's in the D zone, whether it's in the O zone, or he's trying to make a pass in transition. That's why I don't like him.
And I'm looking now. Shout out hockeyviz.com. One of the best $5 I spend every month. You know who's an excellent couple of defensemen for their respective teams this season?
Timothy Liljegren, Rasmus Sandin.
And
yeah.
Rasmus Sandin.
Yeah,
they
two
are
players I didn't want to get rid of.
Great seasons. And this is kind of what I mean when I was talking about guys like Maverick Lamoureux and Louis Crevier, and why I like guys like Liljegren and Sandin, because their actual results are really good, but they don't play a style of play that catches your attention.
And here's the thing with this.
You see the things that go wrong for them, and you pay more attention to that, but you don't for the other types.
Yeah, because the Sportsnet broadcast pans to them with their head up like they did something, like they did a naughty no-no, okay?
Right.
And Timothy Liljegren was a master of just making sure the puck didn't end up in his own end. How much time do the Leafs spend in their own end? A lot more than they used to, because Timothy Liljegren's not there to stop pucks from getting in.
And they can move the puck up the ice.
Yeah.
They can be assertive and move the puck up the ice and get pucks in the offensive zone with control.
Yeah, and OEL can kind of do that, but I feel like he's kind of lazy in the way he elects to make passes. And he's just concerned with getting it out. And a lot of the times it leads to pucks being picked up in the neutral zone and then teams getting right back in with possession. And it's frustrating. That's what, like, defense doesn't necessarily mean what you do in your own end fully. Try and stay out of your own end. And that's more what bothers me about the team. So, and sure, like, you can look at plus minus, but I don't really care at some level, because plus minus also counts on empty net situations too. Like, a 6-on-5 also counts towards plus minus. Like, that just, why? Because it's even strength, suppose. But there's not a goalie in the net. So there's other random factors with plus minus that I don't really care about. It's just, I wish Morgan Riley could be let off his leash a bit more. I wish the team didn't play so safe in terms of how they view defensemen. They just keep bringing in bigger and bigger bodies now. And that's what they seem to value, and it's frustrating. And it's why my mind changed as the season went on as to who I was going to put as the front runner for the Cup. Because if Timothy Liljegren was still on this team and he was playing a top 4 role over Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and the pairings looked something like Riley Tanev, McCabe, Liljegren, and then I guess Benoit Myers, I'd be a lot more inclined to think this team, or not Benoit Myers, you could do, because they're going to play OEL. Benoit OEL, I'd be a lot more inclined to think this team has a better shot at a cup if they were more aggressive the way I was hoping they'd be. Like, their forecheck was much better at the beginning of the year, and they were playing a faster style of game, but they're just too content to sit back absorb pressure, and not push
Yeah.
the pace. And the reason William Nylander's scoring so much is because it's almost like he's like slung out of a catapult with all the speed he's got, and it catches teams off by surprise.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with everything you just said, so we can move on.
Good.
Who is on your dream? What?
If it makes me look smart, I agree with it.
Yeah, exactly. If it makes me look smart, I agree with it. Who is on your dream NHL panel, and who's your favorite play-by-play / color commentator? Okay,
Ooh.
well, my panel, I would say PK Subban,
Yes.
Mike Johnson,
Yes.
Ray Ferraro, and
But I think Mike Johnson I'd put in commentator because I think he's just better as color commentator.
I don't know. I feel like an intermission show with those guys and
I just
Who's
love
a
Mike
good-
Johnson as a color commentator. I just think he's
same. I
excellent.
agree. I love Mike Johnson at doing anything that it is that he does. God, I mean, I still say like Dave Randorf is my favorite play-by-play guy.
He's
I
great.
love Dave
He's great.
Randorf.
It also depends on
but-
what kind of style you're going for. Like, do I want a Homer broadcast or do I want a national broadcast?
Right.
If I want a Homer broadcast, like my play-by-play guys are Jack Edwards and Joe Bowen because I want all the Homer. But if I want a national, I'm going Gordon Miller or who's the other one? He does Seattle games now. He used to do Carolina. John Forsland.
Oh yeah, John Forsland.
Yeah.
I have it in my head. You give me James Duthie hosting an intermission panel with PK Subban, Bruce Boudreau,
Yes,
and Mike Johnson or something, maybe, or Ray Ferraro.
But he needs to make fun of Jeff O'Neill, even if Jeff O'Neill's takes are bad.
Well, he can do it with Jeff O'Neill not even there. They can patch him in.
That's fair. That's fair.
Maybe Jeff O'Neill can be there too, but I don't know. I don't really enjoy Jeff O'Neill's hockey takes as much.
Well, I don't
would
either,
love
but
it.
I think I love watching them.
I think it would just be a nice balance between like goofing off and having fun while also like seeing hockey in a really fun way and like a really progressive and good way that I think people would like. Like that group of guys I think would be really interesting. I'm trying to think of who else. Yeah, I don't know. I want to see Allison Lucan do more. Every time I see Allison Lucan on Seattle broadcasts, I think she's great.
But there's so many good
There's a lot of good
play-by-play
ones,
and color
yeah.
commentators too. There are also some not great ones, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of really good ones. Like I see John Shorthouse being mentioned. He's very good.
Yeah.
I even like Jack Michaels from like the Edmonton broadcast guy. I know a lot of people think he's a bit of a homer, but as he put it, how could you not be as excited if you're calling games with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl? And I get it. I get the enthusiasm. I get the passion. So
Yep. I would do the same. I keep forgetting to ask, but have you checked in on Greentree and how he's doing? I mean, I watch a lot of the Windsor Spitfires, and they're a good team, and he is a big part of it. Again, like we talked about NHL readiness, and like I think he is a little deficient in that like pace of play area. But in terms of like making plays under pressure and like the skill level and sort of working around that as a shortcoming, that's always been the thing that I've really, really loved about his game. And I think that is what probably helps him in the NHL one day. It's funny, like seeing Boston drafted Dean Letourneau at 25 and then drafting LA drafting Liam Greentree one selection later. I kind of saw that and I just went, I mean, if I'm Boston, like Greentree is way more up my alley of like the type of like, you know, you kind of know what you're getting with a Greentree. And I mean, he's on pace for almost 120 points this year, 50 goal season. Like I love the guy. So much skill, so creative, really good under pressure. Like he has a lot of things going for him. That's really good. And I'm really thrilled to see Greentree doing what he does. Bum Scotty Bowman. Yeah, I agree. He was a real bum. I mean, he's still alive, right? Is he? He's still alive, right? Scotty Bowman? Oh God. I feel bad that I don't know that. Yes, he's 91 years old. I don't know why he's not coaching still. Jeez. Why is he not the president of hockey operations for like the Buffalo Sabres or something? He's probably looking for work. Anyway, thoughts on who is this person? I guess that answers your question. Who is this person? A player of the Weyburn Red Wings. What is this? I don't even know what the Weyburn Red Wings are. You stumped me. Let me look. Wyatt Lacoste? Is that like your... Oh, the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League with 2 points in 15 games. Is this like a buddy of yours? He's sick. He's gonna he's gonna win an Art Ross Trophy. Oh, he's got 83 penalty minutes in 15 games this year. So he's just a dressing room guy. You gotta have him. 5'10", 165, taking penalties all night. You gotta have it. Just gotta have it.
Hell yeah.
First round pick. Thoughts on Viktor Fyodorov? Yeah, I actually have seen this guy off and on over the course of the year. He's like probably one of the better Russians for next year that I've seen. Really, really skilled kid. I've liked him a lot. But I can't say I've seen like enough of him to give like a detailed breakdown of him. But I penciled him in for 2026 as like a top 10, 15 range guy right now. But that generally is a death sentence. And by the time next October rolls around, I generally go, well, that was silly of me to say in January of 2025. But I've liked what I've seen out of him. There's plenty. I mean, he's obviously one of the more productive 16-year-olds at that level this year. And that's generally a good thing. Did you check out the Generational Cup of McKenna versus DuPont? No, I did not, but we love Landon DuPont around here.
Yes, we do.
Malcolm Spence feels like a prototypical Corey Pronman prospect. I was genuinely stunned he wasn't on the list at all. I mean, yeah, that's probably the only one where I'm going like, if your goal is that I could see this guy playing in the NHL and Corey Pronman is not, or and Malcolm Spence is not on that list, then I disagree, but I'm also not the biggest fan of Malcolm Spence as a player. Like, I think he's a good third line NHLer one day, like a checking line guy with some skill that keeps his game simple but effective. Thoughts on Alex Bump? Now there's a name. I mean, Alex Bump is, whenever I think about him, I mean, I'm not saying that I like think about him, but whenever he comes into my view at some point, whether it's in college hockey or someone brings him up on the show, I always remember that watching him in his draft year, he was such a guy. Like, he just did everything pretty well. Like, just, he skated okay. Skill was pretty good. Shot was pretty good. Playmaking ability was pretty good. Everything was pretty good. There was just nothing really that like put him over the edge as like, oh, this guy is gonna do this in the NHL, blah blah blah. And I still feel that way when I watch him with Western Michigan, which is not super often, but when I do, I mean, he's on a rip. He's got 12 points in the last 5 games, which is insane. I didn't see that until now. But I mean, that generally the trend for him is that he's around this scoring rate over the course of a season. So we'll see. I don't know. I've always thought he was perfectly fine, like a good at everything, master of nothing type player.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a betting man and the over-under was 14.5 for drafting Aitchison.
Over.
Oh, I think I'm going under at this point. I think I'm going under. If Corey Pronman has him top 10, I'm thinking I'm going under.
What? If you were betting man, yeah, and you want to bet on him being in the top, like where he's going to go?
Under 14. Like sooner than 14.
Oh, sorry. I meant,
yeah.
Yes, under.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Hit the under.
I don't know why, but like what I was saying, I was overconfident on my answer, but I meant under.
Right. Yeah.
That is where the over came from. I am so confident about it, and I'm gonna shut up now because I sound stupid. But it is definitely you're definitely gonna see him in the top 10 or
probably,
close to it.
I would say it's very, very, very likely.
Yeah.
Is Misa the best goal scorer in the draft? I mean, I think he's right up there in terms of just being able to score goals at a projectable level. Carter Bear, I think, plays a really projectable sort of offensive game, but I wouldn't put him in the same category. The only one I'd say could threaten him is maybe Cameron Schmidt. Like, just his ability to shoot the puck is ridiculous. Like Michael Misa isn't like the best shooter in the draft, but I think he is the best scorer. Yeah, Schmidt is probably the best pure shooter, if that's kind of up the same alley. So it's kind of like two sides of the same coin, I guess. But yeah. Thoughts on Ville Goatvanen? Yeah, there's a lot of Ville Koivunen going on. AJ being handsome is deep lore. Never had a face for Ville.
That's not true.
About being good looking.
That's true.
Yeah, you have shown your face before.
Twice.
It's very rare.
Shown it twice. Yes. We did it
We're working on that. We're working on that.
I can show it now. I don't care. Just give me a second to set up the camera I have.
Oh, setting up the camera. If you were the Swedish coach ahead of the U18s, would you take 08s like Nordmark or Hermansson instead of Philip Ekberg? Well, I mean, Ekberg hasn't been amazing for the junior team in Sweden whenever I've seen him. I would say Nordmark I could see being a thing. Hermansson, maybe. I think you're kind of splitting hairs between him and a guy like Ekberg, at least as they are right now. But I mean, if Hermansson plays well at the Five Nations, then yeah, you usually you see the national team for the under 18 tournament coming together in these sorts of tournaments, and I could see it. Catch any Kindle stretch passes lately? I've heard he can hit dudes in the parking lot. Absolutely. That's what he does. Yeah, he's one of the best passers in the game, in my opinion. In the draft, I should say, not in the whole game, but in the draft, yes, he definitely can hit guys in the parking lot. I agree. I could see Verbeek loving Lakovic. Maybe. I don't know if Lakovic is a physical enough big boy for him. I mean, I'm thinking more Aitchison, Jackson Smith, Roger McQueen, Malcolm Spence type for Anaheim. Do you think Theo Lindstein could be a Broberg light with less scoring? I mean, that basically is a guy. I've always thought Lindstein was a safe, dependable defensive defenseman who can eat minutes. If that's what Broberg could be, or if that's what you think Broberg light is, then sure. But I think Lindstein is a capable defensive player. The quote about Quinn Hughes was insane. Yes, it was. It was pretty crazy. Penguins fans got a kick out of Rutherford reverting to Penguins Rutherford, where he just outright says what he's about to do verbatim. Yeah, I mean, it's weird how he's kind of like that. What do you think the potential is for Andrew Basha? Well, Basha is definitely like a high upside, not a long shot, but a definitely high upside, low floor guy. I love him. He's had some injuries this season, which is a bit of an issue, but the skill level, the pace in his game, I think is good enough. I think that if you give him time, he will develop really, really well. Like I would, he's energetic, but he's skilled and fast and moves well. There's a lot to love about his game, I think, and he's on a really good team. He's obviously not scoring at the same rate as he did last year, but that doesn't always really concern me all that much because I've seen him a bunch and I know what I've seen. Is he perfect? No, not at all. I think there's a chance he's not an NHL player at the end of the day, but he is a good player. Why on earth did they extend both guys if they knew this was happening for the last few years? That's a very good question.
They're dumb.
Because it's a very good question. Do you think that Horvat saying publicly that he'd love to have Pettersson with him in Long Island is a passive-aggressive saying that Miller is an issue? I don't know, but I think that more just says that Horvat loves Elias Pettersson because he played with him before and is like, yeah. And I feel like Pettersson on the Islanders would be quite the shot in the arm that would boost an offense that kind of needs it. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of players that would love to have Elias Pettersson on the line. Nobody can be a catalyst for Buffalo, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
If you trade Pettersson and Miller, how does Hughes feel? Does he want to stick around for a rebuild? I wouldn't. If I were Quinn Hughes and I've been on a team that's been not that good ever since he showed up, except for a couple of years, and you trade your two main players because of the culture that's in the dressing room that they've helped create or whatever it is, I don't know. I'm sure he probably would be like, what are you going to be? Like a bottom feeder for the next 5 years, and I'm going to play 30 minutes a night trying to help us win, and so we finish maybe in a competitive spot for a playoff role. Like I think he'd be in every right to be the guy to be like, if that's going to be it, then I don't really want to do that.
I want to go spend time with my brothers, please.
Sure. Like that would be probably like, how long has Quinn Hughes been in the league? Like he's in 1999, so he's 20. He's going to be 26 if he isn't 26 already. Yeah, he's turning 26 in October. So if Vancouver is pulling the chute and they're going, you know what, Quinn, I think we're gonna we're gonna hit the deck and get rid of these guys and try to get back in 2 years. Like he'll be pushing 30, and that's a maybe, right? Like I don't know what they're gonna get for those two guys. I don't think their prospect pipeline is particularly strong. So what does that look like? You know, if you're Hughes, are you going to be like, well, what have we done since I got here? He's been in the playoffs 2 times, you know, in 6 seasons, and they're paying him a lot of money. I don't know. I don't blame him if he doesn't want to deal with that. Is it fair to say that right now the Penguins have a clearer path forward than the Canucks? I'd say almost everybody has a clearer path forward at this moment than the Vancouver Canucks. Like,
Or they just keep them. They just keep the guys. They deal with it. Honestly,
yeah.
That's why I don't understand why
We're
you
paying
come out
you
and say
$20
it.
million in total. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
You're adults. You are adults. Figure it out. You know? Who would you rather build around, Leo Carlsson or Adam Fantilli? Can I say yes? They both bring different things to the table. I lean Fantilli. I still do.
I'm going Adam Fantilli. It's just my
Carlson
style.
That's no disrespect to Leo Carlsson. He's sick.
Mm-hmm.
From a Canucks fan, this doesn't really matter, and we shouldn't sell them below market value. Teams performing about as expected on the ice. I mean, That's fair. I think that's totally fair too. It is the fact that the president of the team though came out and was like, it is affecting everyone. That's problematic.
Mm-hmm.
That's problematic. Thoughts on the Utah name ideas? Yeah, so the Yeti isn't going to happen, which is unfortunate. But
so
I also
have now the Wasatch.
I was never a big fan of that anyway. Yeah, the Utah Hockey Club sticking around, Utah Mammoth, and the Utah Wasatch.
Another way to say Yeti, I believe.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's like a mountain monster, isn't it? Like a
something like
or
that.
I thought it was a tribe native to the area, but I could be wrong. Oh, it's a mountain range.
I still think they're going with a Yeti logo if they do that.
Probably. I mean, if they go hockey club, there's nothing that stops them from
using a Yeti.
Factoring a Yeti face into like a shield logo or something,
mm-hmm.
and like having their mascot be a Yeti. I mean, I've always maintained that naming a team the Utah Hockey Club, I think it rolls off the tongue well. They've already got it. I think they've got a good color scheme and a good vibe and it's good. I like it the way it is. I might spruce up the jerseys a little bit more for next season, add a little bit more pizzazz, but like the Wasatch doesn't roll off the tongue for me particularly well. And Mammoth, the Utah Mammoth, there's something about that doesn't sound right to me. And so if I'm a Utah hockey fan, I just go, you know what? It's kind of cool to just be the Utah Hockey Club and we waltz in.
Yeah.
You know, I would go that direction. And I know that might be boring, but I don't care. I don't find it boring.
No, I like the idea of Hockey Club and then having a Yeti logo.
Yeah. Last show you said you had thoughts on McKenna. Care to share those? I mean, we'll have a discussion about him when we have Joel Henderson back on the show. Which
I think that's what you mentioned. I think it was what I mentioned. I think it was he has some thoughts to share.
He does
more
yes.
so
I
than
mean, I did too.
Did.
I said I do too, and I think to sum it up quickly for me with McKenna is he is undeniably extraordinarily skilled and creative and intelligent, but he is pretty slender and has been since he was drafted in the WHL. He is a player who I think needs a lot of time and space to be at his best. And under pressure is when things get a little bit tough, and that's not going to get any easier over the years. So for me, it's like I see guys who quarterback play outside the offensive zone a little bit more interestingly than I've seen McKenna do it. But in terms of just pure skill and scoring ability and playmaking ability, I mean, McKenna's second to none. But again, we'll have a smarter person than me on the show, and we'll talk about it. Could you ever see a woman playing in the NHL? I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm not going to say it's impossible.
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Because there's now they're now putting a lot behind a good women's league.
Well, that's true. I agree with that. I think that the fact that the PWHL has been the success that it has been. I'm going to a game on Saturday actually. is a big boost, and that's fair. I think that if you're honest with yourself and you watch the PWHL, it's just not the same. It's not the NHL at all. But that's not the point, really, right? Like it's not really the point. And I've loved the PWHL ever since it sort of dropped, and they're doing really really well. I will say though, like watching the under 18 tournament for girls hockey, and I've seen a little bit of women's college hockey, and that's where the vast majority of the highest end young women's hockey players play. Like people like Caroline Harvey, who is one of my favorite players in the world, coming along. And I think that players like her will move the needle in the right direction. You know, like if you think about it, like what the NHL was like before Wayne Gretzky came along, right? Like the NHL was different after he showed up, right? And it moved in a very positive direction over a decade, right? And I think that women's hockey will do that in a way that is similar to like how, you know, countries industrialize when after other countries do it, they do it quicker. You know, it's like that kind of thing of like they there's a lot of headroom, I think, to make up between boys and girls hockey. And based on the what I've seen of the especially American women's junior team, the fun factor and the skill level is just so good and getting better really quickly. So I'm hopeful that the next 5 years we see a rapid increase in the quality of play in the PWHL from what it is now, which is really good. It's always really good, but closing that gap and becoming even better and better, especially as they get access to more resources. And I don't think Murray Philly Poulin could be the answer for the Leafs at third line center. uh, what do you think about Logan Howery? That's a name I have not thought about in a long time, so I'll check it out later. Oh yeah, he's an 08. Yeah, right. I know this guy, but can't say I've seen a tremendous amount of him. Your boy Gendron keeps scoring in the AHL. Well, that makes sense because it makes me look smart. It's true. He's elite, and I always knew it because I'm smart, and this makes me look smart. And there's that. You
If
know,
it makes me look smart, I agree with it.
I mean, when you have 4 points in your last 10 games, you just have to take credit for it. I'm kidding, but you know, I've always loved Gendron. Whenever I watch Lehigh Valley, I've popped in on him once in a while over the course of the season, and I think he's great. Have you seen any Chase Reed this year? Torching the OHL as a D-1. I mean, Chase Reed is a good time. I've watched him since last season here and there, and he always came away to me as just like a real jerk, like just a guy who could play that tough style of play. I don't know about like, you know, a guy who is under a point a game in the null and then going all of a sudden to being over a point a game in the OHL. To me, that doesn't strike me as like sustainable in terms of a trend. And I've never thought of him as a particularly offensive leaning player, but I think that he has a physical side to him. He brings all the tools I think necessary to sort of eat minutes and play a strong game in general. I actually didn't even know he was playing for Sioux, so I'll check it out because I've always liked Chase Reed. He's a fun player. How is Dane Noyer ranked ahead of Martone? Put Martone in the queue and Dane Noyer in the OHL and see the difference. I agree. Yep, I agree. Thoughts on the Four Nations captains? William Nylander is the only one I care about.
He's not a captain though. He's an alternate captain.
But that's what I mean. He is a captain.
Hedman,
He's not
Barkov,
the captain.
Crosby, Matthews. Fine.
I don't know what. Yeah, so I don't know what else you want.
Fine.
Is Greg Cronin ruining the Ducks' young players with his style of play, or is it the players not playing to their potential, or are they just young? I mean, I've never. Again, what I do is I often go to subreddits of these people and just lurk and see what fans are talking about, because at the end of the day, like if lots of people agree on a thing, it's curious and it's worth exploring. I mean, Greg Cronin's track record has not been particularly amazing. I think the Steve Dangle podcast went through it more detailed than I did, or I would. But the point is, like, Jakob Silverberg, after he retired, went to Sweden and basically said that Greg Cronin was a troglodyte Neanderthal and was just yelling at guys all the time and like embarrassing them and everything. And like, that's not how I would coach for sure, especially let alone the NHL, even in the NHL. I think that, Cronin, I think, came out and said something along the lines of like, the thing about Mason McTavish is he's a third line player, but has a lot of skill, and it's hard to find guys to play with that. And I hear that and I go, well, I mean, you drafted him top 3. Like, you should probably think of him as a top 6 guy somehow. And I feel like he could play in your top 6, but whatever. I don't think he's helping. Like, I think Trevor Zegras, whenever I watch the Ducks and I look at Trevor Zegras, I'm like, he's still there. There's something locked away there that is still there. He has not forgotten how to play hockey, but he plays like he's done. Like, he plays like he's just like, I'm over it. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Like, if it's just not a match between him and management and the coaching staff and all of that, I would believe it. I would believe it, because I still believe in that kid, because there's a lot that he does where I'm like, I just don't know if he has the right group of guys around him to deal with the skill level and the speed of his game. It just isn't the right matchup, because it just doesn't seem to be what the Ducks want to be, right? I mean, their captain is Radko Gudas. Like, it just doesn't seem to line up with their philosophy. And you look at who they've drafted over the years, and it just doesn't seem to make sense. So it seems to me that the Ducks want to be the way that Greg Cronin wants the Ducks to be, but it doesn't seem congruent with how hockey is nowadays and how good teams are and are coached. Like, that's my read on it. But, like, Greg Cronin was an assistant coach for Randy Carlyle in Toronto, right? And those were notoriously silly times for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, just silliness.
Don't remind me. Please.
Oh, I just did. Fantasy hockey question. Who's the most dynasty relevant draftee in the league that counts hits, blocks, and penalty minutes? Martone.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
You gotta wait until they actually get drafted to a team, because
that is very true.
That will tell you what kind of role they're gonna have. At least it'll give you a better sense of what you're looking at. I think it's hard to really evaluate what a player's fantasy impact is going to be without knowing like the path that they have ahead of them. Like, if Matthew Schaefer, like, this is just a complete hypothetical. If Matthew Schaefer was on the Vancouver Canucks behind Quinn Hughes, I wouldn't think about him all that much, because he's never unseating Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
But if he's on a team like Chicago, I think about it more. And I think Martone, you're going to get a guy who definitely is going to fill out those Bango stat categories. So, like, hits, blocks, PIMs. He will help you with that. More so on the hits and penalty minutes side of things. But I think it's too early to ask. Too early to give you an answer. Not too early to ask, but too early to give you a good answer on how I really feel about who I'd lean. But I think Martone's definitely going to bring value in a league like that.
All right. I would agree. Who would you rather have on the farm? Luke Hughes, Brant Clark, or Alexander Nikishin? On the farm, like
Luke
on
Hughes.
A farm literally, or like on a team? I would say on a farm, probably Nikishin. He's a strong boy.
Like, I'm thinking farm system, and your farm system is what that might mean.
Oh, well, then Luke Hughes.
It's Luke Hughes.
Yeah.
And
on an actual farm, like tilling the fields,
Nikishin.
Probably Nikishin. Yeah, Nikishin.
Also, I'm trying to work on the camera, but I may have to refresh the scene.
He's too handsome. He broke it.
No. Look, I will. Here's what I'll do. Because I don't want to ruin the stream by accident.
Right.
And I've been trying to punch this through. I will appear definitely at the start of next episode when we have Sam's going to be on too, actually. True. So I will appear for that, okay? I'm trying.
Mark your calendars now.
I'm trying to get the camera to work, but I don't want to have Will hearing two audio sources of me and having to fix that. So
One is enough.
I know. I don't want to derail this whole thing, but it's not because of a lack of effort. but I have a legitimate excuse. And buttery spread, I know it's you who said it. Go ahead and call me Delay J. It's fine. That's what I'm doing. I'm delaying.
Yep. Alrighty. What would AJ trade for the Leafs to get Brant Clark? Dude would be a bad Leaf, I think.
No, I wouldn't trade
Brant
anything.
Clark, I don't think Brant Clark would fit with what they're doing.
But even then, it's like what you'd have to give up is probably too much.
Yeah.
And I'm just not. Like, he's not even my kind of player, really. Like, he's a good player. He's just not my kind of defenseman.
Yep.
He's not Timothy Liljegren. He's not Timothy Liljegren.
All right. Have you seen much of Perron this year? How's he progressing? I guess you mean Jaden. I haven't seen a tremendous amount. I'd be very curious to see how much he's playing because last year he didn't play much. So I'm going to quickly check that and try to fill the time. But I mean, he always was a guy who I thought was going to be a long-term project, but with a ton of potential. Okay, so he's playing solid minutes. Like his possession numbers look pretty good as well. So I don't think he's like getting torched. But he is a player who I thought his hockey IQ and puck management skills were questionable at times. Skating himself into a little bit of trouble a lot. He puts a lot on his plate. Like he's a guy who I think sees himself as a really, 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 really talented high-end hockey player, which he is. But like figuring that out in the scheme of a roster and like figuring out the balance point between all of those things, I think is a very important thing to do as well. And so for me, like a guy I would not even think about pulling out of college this quickly. Like Carolina has no need to do that. They've got plenty of young guys already. You let him play in college and just score more and more and more, and hopefully it works better and better. Like North Dakota, I don't even know who's on that team anymore. Sacha Boisvert, like he was a mid-first round draft pick, and he's just a little bit ahead of Perron in terms of scoring. There's not a whole lot on the roster with him. Like Max Swanson, Cam Berg. Cam Berg's been pretty good. I like him decently well, but Nodak doesn't really seem to have the like powerhouse franchise team that they've had in the past right now.
Also, I want to address this. Yes, OEL won a cup as a third pair defenseman, not as a second pair defenseman.
The guy.
I do not care if you have won a cup. Did David Bolin change the fate of the Leafs? No, he did not. He won a cup in Chicago. Didn't matter. It's like just because you've won a cup doesn't mean anything in terms of how you're going to play now. That is just nice, an accolade that you have. Do I want Pat Maroon on my team? God, no. Please, don't ever suggest
He's
that.
elite.
He's elite at finding his way onto good teams.
Moving forward, will Scouching be ranking only 24 players every year because this is the new standard?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to pay me any money anymore.
No, you have to. You pay.
Right, but you're not gonna get the list that you usually get. It's just gonna be 24 guys.
No, you pay to get more than 24 guys. Now
that's true. There you go. That's it. You pay for more than 24.
Every $5 you pay, you get another set of 24 names.
Right. Exactly. At what point is it the player's fault when said player needs a specific coach to have good stats? I mean, I think it's more complicated than that. Like, because I think it's that the wrong coach can torpedo a player. And so it's like, I don't really know how to answer that because I feel like that's also different for every player, like everyone. I don't see many Red Wings games, but Mickey Redmond Redmond's good too. Last night's Sportsnet announcers mentioned that the Leafs defense is not the problem over the past playoffs, but a minute later, the same announcer says that the Leafs might need better defense to win in the playoffs. That's Sportsnet, baby. That's the way it is.
The most mushy
criticize the Leafs and then somehow find a way to also think they're great, but also make fun of them. I don't know.
I hate I worked for Sportsnet. Yeah. All right, I did. It was a blast, but also, God. Why are they so boring?
Yeah.
Why are they so boring? I worked on the YouTube side. I didn't work in like the full broadcast
TV.
side.
Yeah.
But like, man,
I've never liked their broadcasts. I've never liked it.
I just like Elliot and that's it.
Yeah, like I mean, I think Kevin BX is an interesting one to have there.
Actually, I like Jen Botterill.
Yeah, Jen Botterill's pretty good too. But regardless,
I
it's
don't agree
just
with everything she says, but I
well,
think
no.
she's the most insightful person on that panel most of the time.
Yeah, I think people don't like her because she has more of a modern sort of progressive view of things and pushes back on guys like Kevin Bieksa who are like, well, you didn't play, so when I played, it was like this. And you're like, well, that is kind of silly, don't you think? And then everyone gets after the person who suggests it's a little silly because they never played or whatever, even though she did, right? Like she was an elite women's hockey player. But anyway, whatever. Neither here nor there.
He's getting
Never been a huge fan of
offensive,
Sportsnet. Right.
as he
Uh,
likes to say. It's
yeah,
offensive. Come
offensive.
on, man.
Yeah. Thoughts on Ben Beldikos? I actually looked this guy up. He's a Greek kid playing in England in
That's
the
cool.
fourth division. When you have a guy who scored 1 goal in 6 games at a tournament that had teams from Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Ireland, and Portugal, you just got to put him in the first round. I think it's elite. It's elite stuff. Let alone what Ethan Lim is capable of. The famous Argentinian hockey player Ethan Lim. So yes, good for him. NCAA 3rd division bottom 6 guy Ethan Lim, part Argentinian. Anyway, does Chicago regret not selecting Ivan Demidov?
They should.
They should. No comment on I told you so, but I told you so. And so yes, I lied just now. Yes, comment. I mean, I still cannot for the life of me believe that they looked at Connor Bedard and said, hey, we can get you a toy to play with, and you and him could probably ride off into the sunset for the next 15 years and help each other score 100 points a season. But we're going to take this other guy. They said no. And then another team said no. And then another team said no. Like Columbus picked a guy with back problems who has not played yet this season instead of Ivan Demidov. And I love Caden Lindstrom. I really do. I think he's a really good player. I think he could be a really good NHLer. But God, Ivan Demidov is the only guy on planet Earth that I looked at last year and said he is pushing Macklin Celebrini. Like that's the only guy on the planet.
It's in the title, actually.
Yeah, I still believe it. I still believe it. And he's been getting better and better this season. He is the real deal, kids. And yeah, it just the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Okay. How impactful should Igor Chernyshov be for the Saginaw Spirit? I mean, he should be quite good. He's coming from the KHL, right? Like he's physical enough, he's skilled enough, he is smart enough, just basic hockey. He's just a good play the frickin' game hockey player. I think he's probably like a 3rd line NHL guy with some offensive pop, but I don't have huge expectations of him, but I like him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a guy like Pastujov having any real chances as an NHL player? Maybe, but not really. Like, is he going to be enough of a difference maker to be a top 6 forward in the NHL? He might get a cup of coffee, but I've never seen Pastujov as a guy who moves the needle enough and pushes pace of the game enough to be like a consistent NHL scorer.
God, I remember when there was some model that had him compared to Nikita Kucherov. Wasn't it like Jack Hans? Or something
I don't know.
like that. I remember something like that.
Well, I mean, he scores a lot of points. Like he scored a lot of points, you know?
But that's it.
Yeah. That's it. Anyway. Thoughts on Viggo Bjork? I think he's pretty good. Super smart and really skilled. But I honestly haven't seen as much of him as the other guys on your garden, so I'll reserve my thoughts on him for next season. Ha ha ha. You talked about Dahlin last stream. Any thoughts on Linus Karlsson, the other part of the Dahlin trade? I love Linus Karlsson. I've always loved him. I think he's a member of Team Scouching, actually, from years ago. Let's see. Let me take a look. But I think he is. Let's see. Linus Karlsson. Is he? Oh, maybe not. Oh, yes, he is. There he is. Linus Karlsson would have been my pick at... Oh, I don't have it listed anymore. Oh, yes, the 83rd overall in 2018. He would have been my pick. Really, really like him. I think in the NHL he fits an offensive role, but I think he doesn't really score all that much right now. But yeah, I mean, I like him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be willing to give him a shot if Vancouver's done with him. All right, what do we got? And then we can be out of here. Do you keep track or watch any of the 4 or 5 nation tournaments for D-1 and 2 that happen through the season? I don't. When I track data, it's strictly the draft class and maybe some reentry guys, but I watch those tournaments from time to time, and I try to keep tabs on the -1 kids as much as I can. But yeah, I don't I watch them from time to time, but I don't track them. Zegras was playing the boring, effective style coaches want, but recently he's slowing at it. Yeah, I mean, that's my read when I watch the Ducks is I go, yeah, that's Trevor Zegras out there, but it's not Trevor Zegras, right? Like that's, I don't know what they're doing. I think they've removed the joy of life from him, it seems. Like that's what it seems like. Well, he just plays like anyone else. Like, and but then he just dangles the pants off of people. And it's almost like he gets punished when he does that. And it's like, all right, whatever. And yeah, Ducks for Cup 2029, a bit of a more trusted source than me. Zegras is 100% still there, and if the team fumbles them, I'll never forgive them. I 100% agree. He was their leading scorer for a little while, and then all of a sudden they changed gears and went, you know what? Let's not like this player anymore. And said, Nathan Gaucher type players in the first round, please, and Noah Warren in the second round, and whatever. Like, no fun allowed. No more fun. The ancient NHL archetype cannot handle mold breaking Zegras glitz. That's true. I also believe it was Patrick Bacon's model that had passage off that high.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay.
Would you say passing on Michkov for Reinbacher is equivalent to passing on Demidov for Levshinov? I would say no. Because I think I remember I liked Reinbacher a lot more than I liked Levshinov that year.
But it's comparable.
It's comparable, I think. Because Michkov in Montreal right now. I mean, also Michkov supposedly didn't only really wanted to go to Philadelphia, I think.
Well, if that's the case, then
that was rumored.
More forgivable.
So it's a little more complicated than that. But I mean, for me, if I'm Montreal, Michkov was pretty clearly the guy that I would have taken there, and I think he would fit right in with Montreal right now and be quite the player to have on the roster. But I mean, Demidov though, sheesh, like. I don't know. He was so clearly number 2 for me last year, way closer to 1 than 3. And so, I mean, Michkov, you have an argument that he maybe wasn't the top guy in that range, but regardless, it doesn't matter.
Also, did we skim past the whole Fabian Lysell thing? Because it's not true.
Yes, because I'm tired of talking about it.
But it's not true. He actually has 2 points in his last 2 games. He has.
Yeah, he's a point a game over his last 10.
He's got 4 points in his last 3. In fact, so. Oh, I went to the Providence stat page for him.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that was correct, and it's not. So get your facts right.
Yep.
But appreciate all of your chats because it drives up engagements.
Okay. Yeah, if Byron Bader's model still has passages of a 66% chance of being a star, then I don't know what to tell you. Also, hello, Mikhail. What's going on, bud?
Yeah, man.
Hello from Gothenburg. Fancy pants on the west coast of Sweden. What's going on? Hope it's lovely there. Yeah, you can't. I agree, though. You can't blame models for reporting outliers when they are literally just comparing one simple stat with age. I mean, I agree, and that's why I don't really use that stuff anymore. I'm not even answering that question about Paraskevas Georgiadis. He's probably awesome. And thank you for the super chat. It's very well appreciated, Ducks for Cup. And on that note, we're going to take off. It's been really, really good. This has been a great show. Thanks for joining us. It's been a good time. Always. Watching so much hockey. I agree, Mikhail. Same. But yeah, hope you're all doing well. Again, if you are not aware, we are supported by Fanatics. You can use our link in the description or in the chat or in the chat box, or scan the QR code in the video, and you can use our affiliate link, which will give us a kickback on anything you buy in the store. As well, we're brought to you by Puck Preps to get all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs, all kinds of fun stuff over at puckpreps.com. You can check that out there. And Scouching.ca. I should know my own website URL, where you can get a subscription where at any tier you get access to our Discord servers, as well as some cool data visualization tools at any budget, and some cool stuff that's just been updated. So you can check that out all at Scouching.ca today. and get yourself signed up. So again, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun. AJ, thank you again for your assistance and everything. We got game tape coming tomorrow. We've got another game tape next week. We've got video room on Michael Hage out you can check out. There's all kinds of fun stuff on the channel.
And video room's coming out of Oliver Moore and TJ Ginla next week.
TJ Ginla next week and Oliver Moore. So you can look forward to that as well. And yeah, on that note, we're off. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday night.
Leafs for Cup. Go Leafs, go.